Good evening, everybody, and welcome again to a new Fireside of Revelation Hour. It's lovely to be with you this evening again to discuss another topic, and I hope that you guys enjoy this evening. Just to remind you, really, to let you know that we're now live on YouTube, Facebook, and also for those who on Zoom can join us on Zoom here this evening as we'll be discussing fake news. But before we do that, just let me remind you as well, if you have any question, this is a very interactive show, so if you have any question, please use the chat box. If you're on Zoom, if you're on YouTube or Facebook, just use a normal chat and we'll be able to send those questions to our guest and we'll try to answer you as best as we can. All right, I just want to get kick off very, very quickly. So we're going to be talking today about fake news. Now, there's a lot of talk about fake news and so on, but I don't want us to start talking about it yet. I just want to show you a quick clip and then we're going to bring our guests in and we'll be beginning to dwell into fake news.
All the police made public about the attacker was that he was 17 years old and from Cardiff. Now, that's for legal reasons. Children can't be named. But it's not much information, and that's when misinformation floods the zone. The online speculation started pretty immediately on July the 29th, specifically anti-immigrant sentiment. You can see it here in terms of engagements on X, formerly known as Twitter. There's this big rise, and it continues for a long while. Now, one X account drove that conversation in particular. It generally deals in anti-immigrant sentiment, and it did so in this case in the afternoon of the attack, saying the attacker was alleged to be a Muslim immigrant. We know that is not the case. Now, this account is followed by Andrew Tate. Here he is, the controversial influencer, and later Tate posts this, calling the attacker an illegal migrant. Again, completely incorrectly. And then there's this. It's a much more specific piece of misinformation. It gives a name which we don't think corresponds to anyone we've come across, and it takes on its own life. Again, it spreads and spread, not as much as the general anti-immigrant speculation. You can see here the name in orange compared to the yellow general anti-immigrant sentiment, but it solidifies that narrative that this is to do with immigration and Islam. Now, that was initially posted on X in a deleted post now, but it was popularized by this account, a website called Channel 3 Now. They picked it up. Now, they appear to produce clickbait articles to drive advertising revenue, and this one really took off. Now, they subsequently posted to apologize for the, quote, misleading information, saying they deeply regret any confusion or, in their words, inconvenience they may have caused. So we have this wild, rabble-rousing, anti-migrant, anti-Islam atmosphere online, and now it collides with another separate but linked movement. This is the first poster we found calling for a protest, posted again on the day of the attack. It was created on TikTok and spread onto Telegram. Now, Telegram is a platform where the network of the far right tends to organize in different clusters. This poster was included in one group that featured explicitly Nazi imagery. And there were other calls to arms like this, apparently posted by another account on Telegram on Tuesday morning by someone involved with the far-right organization, Patriotic Alternative. And then they proliferate, all centering around the same message, this call to arms. They're posted by small accounts on Telegram, and they get boosted back on X, increasing the reach of the message. It is those two worlds that drive this. Online misinformation, for whatever reason, being seized on by a more organized online right. And that is fed back into the wider X ecosystem. The result on the streets is chaos and violence.
Wow, wonderful, wonderful. So I just really want to get our guests in, just to really to begin to dwell very deeply into fake news. And I'm here joined here with our wonderful friend of mine, Noel Hadjimichael here. So hi, Noel, how you doing? You okay?
Hello, Jean-Marc. So good to be with you tonight.
Well, it is good to be with you as well. This is the second time that you appear on our show, and it's fantastic to have you here with us as well. And really hope that we can actually just to get a little bit more understanding about fake news. But I would like to start very straight to the point. Summer riots. This is something that's kind of affected the UK, and I think it has an impact on quite on a lot of the people. But have you got kind of an idea how do you believe? Because we all believe that the information that we hear is that it started by misinformation. Is it something that you can actually maybe tell us about it?
Of course, and thank you for raising this topic, because everyone, even my 86-year-old mother, has one of these. The whole world is now so interconnected. We used to live in a village or a town or a community, sometimes related to a church, sometimes related to a geography, sometimes related to a group of people who are all very similar. That's now history. That is now back in the past. Every single person has the ability to connect with every other single person on the globe. And because of that, information is the new gold. And we have these two terms, misinformation, MIS, versus disinformation, DIS.
What's the
Now,
difference between misinformation and disinformation?
fantastic question. Both have problems, both hurt, but both are different. Misinformation is inadvertent. It happens because someone makes a mistake. Somebody relies on information which is false, but they don't intend to harm anyone. Misinformation is maybe you cut a corner, you hear something, you don't check it out. 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 100 years ago, people in media, newspapers, maybe television 25 years ago, radio 40 years ago, they would check because they didn't want the reputation of getting something wrong. Disinformation, DIS, is deliberate. Somebody has put information out to confuse, to create conflict, to create harm or hate. It's often completely fictional. It does not exist. It is information that is designed to often corrode our trust in institutions, our trust in each other. In many ways, misinformation has always been around. People have always made mistakes. People have always relied on maybe the wrong source. Maybe they've made a calculation. It wasn't £1 million that the government is going to save. It's going to be £1,000 the government's going to save. Whereas now, when we have this democratization of media, where every person, not just you, Jean-Marc, not just me, I used to be a blogger 20 years ago. Can you believe it? I was young one.
Are you still quite young?
That was for a newspaper. And there were 8 of us who blogged. Now there may be 800,000 people with blogs that were as big as my blog at the newspaper, because the world has given people the tools, but we've always had the potential for the media, the narrative, the story to be used against someone, against other people, against other countries. I was just reading, there's an election in Australia, and there are plenty of platforms. You know, you have Blue Sky, you've got Twitter, you've got Facebook, you've got LinkedIn, blah, blah, blah. But there's a Chinese-based platform, which is for people who utilize the Chinese language and often come originally from China or have the connection to China. And it's called Red Note. Now, there's been a lot of media speculation the last 24 hours because there's been outrageous claims about Australia attacking the government and the opposition. So you have to ask yourself, in an election, why is someone going to the trouble of trying to harm one side of politics versus the other side of politics? Whose interest is it? And you can't blame people. You know, they trust their devices, they trust their communications for so much. Their banking, their maps, how to go from here to there. They connect with family. They believe what they see. And if there's even a little bit of plausibility, maybe you think the government is wrong. Maybe you think that somebody is doing the wrong thing, or they could be doing the wrong thing, then you are easily susceptible to the toxic harm that comes with this.
We talked early on as a preview that I showed to some of our listeners here, and you were mentioning the relation between basically the disinformation or fake news we're talking about is really kind of playing on the emotion of people, you know. And you also mentioned just now about the difference between misinformation and disinformation, which is a really kind of fuel a very different agenda. When we look at the summer riots, what happened? What's your take on it?
Well, the first thing that any decent person has to say is the tragedy of Southport, the tragedy of that summer, was a human tragedy, violence against children, the horror, the completely unbelievable acts of an individual. That's the first thing to place in context. But then think about summertime. Think about people have more time, there's more light, maybe they drink a little bit more, maybe the weather is a little bit hotter. I know this is England, so I won't make any jokes. There's at least 3 sunny days in summer in the United Kingdom, I'm sure of it. But yes, you've taken that very well. The really sad thing is that it happened so quickly, within minutes, within an hour or two of the first information. And, you know, the BBC and other people, the police, they put out a statement, there's an incident, please don't go there, it's unsafe. Police are responding, armed police, blah, 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 you know, stay indoors. You know, this is what you would expect. We had the same with 7/7. We had the same in so many other incidents. But the speed of the response, the cleverness of the response, and it was all about not the facts, but the emotion. It is so easy to connect with somebody emotionally. We connect with music emotionally. In our faith communities, we connect with other people and with God emotionally. In sport, I am connected emotionally to my football club. I can tell you, it's been a long 50 years of loyalty. The boys have not played very well, but the connection isn't based on fact. It's based on emotion, feeling, and a sense of alignment. And what people have done is they've tried to put one group of people against another group of people. And they've tried to bypass all of the barriers, all of the checks and balances. Who helps? There's the government, there's the church, there's business, there's the NHS, there's the institutions of the media, and you've got voluntary organisations. Plenty of institutions that we used to have great faith in, and now we don't have as much faith in those institutions. Britain has last year, in the Edelman survey, Britain out of 28 countries had the lowest level of trust when you asked people, would the media, can they be trusted to do the right thing? Only 31%, less than 1 in 3 people said so. But if you change the question, you get different answers. If you ask people, do you trust the media most of the time? In Finland, 7 out of 10 people. In Britain, 4 out of 10 people. In Greece, only 2 out of 10 people. So you ask a different question, you can even get a different answer. And that's one of the tricky things. I would not want to be on doing a blog right now because you have artificial bots who attack you. You have people who think it's acceptable to send threats. You have people who are quite happy to demonstrate outside your house. This is not an easy time to have values and to speak up.
This is very, very, very interesting. Because as I was, looking into the summer, right, and you clearly say something which is so poignant. First of all, is what happened, the horrible tragedy that took place in Southport. First of all, that kind of really kind of been brushed aside by this interesting movement of fake news and far right movement taking over and beginning to speculate. I mean, I won't even use the word speculate. I mean, they probably knew exactly what they were doing. They had no information, but obviously they were fueled by the, as you said, by the emotions, by the ideology as well, to begin to promote something which is wasn't. But what was interesting is out of this disinformation, as you mentioned it, he created something even much more dramatic and actually kind of spill over. And in the event of it, he kind of forgot about people grieving the loss of the children in Southport.
Of
You
course,
know.
it was opportunistic, it was cruel in some ways, and I never like to disagree with Jean-Marc, but I must say that yes, some people absolutely, I am sure, believed what they knew to be the truth, and they chose to use the toxic, harmful, hateful narrative. But there is another group of people, and it's not that they are less culpable. They are equally worthy of being damned, but they they are not able to see, because of limited understanding, ignorance, lack of knowledge, carelessness. There used to be a beautiful term. I mean, I'm a former lawyer, so I can tell these jokes, but there used to be this American term that a good lawyer, a successful lawyer, is an ambulance chaser. When you see the ambulance, you chase the ambulance, because you might get a good paying client out of it. Well, these people are audience chasers. You see this on some of the platforms, some of the smaller platforms. You see somebody making noise in your local area about maybe local government or planning decisions or the environment or the local school or some road, or maybe they don't like the local MP, or maybe they don't like a factory that's being built or a factory that's being closed down. And you see them on something local that you maybe look at maybe once a day for a few seconds or maybe a minute or two, and they start making comments and they get 5 likes, 10 likes, 15 likes. A few people connect. And then you notice the week after, they start becoming more aggressive, more outrageous, more unhinged. Because if they say something outrageous, 150 people watch it, 30 people, 50 people like it, 11, 15, 25 people say something. So the people who put the petrol on top of the fire, they get the benefit of the flames, the heat, the light, and, it's a buzz for them. I mean, we've had this for hundreds of years. We've always had, in any society that isn't completely rural and completely settled, whenever you have cities and towns, you can have riots, you can have outbreaks of lawlessness. And some people take the opportunity. They loot, they steal, they rape, they kill. They get involved because to them, it's an opportunity. And we have had so many years since the last big war, 1939, 1945, in Europe especially, we have had relatively settled times. But of course, we have had pockets of terrorism, pockets of unrest. We had the Yugoslav war, a range of things, but in the main. But you look at Africa, like Rwanda, Sudan, North Africa, you look at Asia, you look at Myanmar, I still call Myanmar Burma. You look at some countries like Venezuela and South America, the cartels operating in Mexico. The rest of the world, most people in the world do not live with safety, with contentment. There is more drama in their lives. And this false propaganda can be used by people to stay in control, in power, or to get power.
That's interesting. We talked as well early on this morning, and I think I wanted to really briefly touch on it, is the first instance of fake news or disinformation, which you believe stem from what happened in Rwanda. I mean, potentially for the younger generation, it may be something that they're not really aware, but for the older generation that usually see things unfolding directly. And it's quite interesting that as we're watching the story unfolded, we did not understand where it came from, really did not have an understanding, but we knew that something happened that just really got one tribe or one tribe to go against another one, even though back in the days they were just buddies, they were friends, they were living together, they were just and you mentioned that that was the first form of disinformation. Is this something that was spread over time? Is it something, a word or a message that has been spread and that been kind of twisted or that created this horrible conflict? I call it genocide because it was truly a genocide in that time.
I think it's a little bit of that rather traditional way of looking at it. It was the perfect storm. You had political leadership that failed. You had grievance. One group felt another group had more power, more influence unjustly. You had one group who was seen as privileged, another group that was seen to be oppressed. There was this mass hysteria of gossip, propaganda, radio, you name it, utilizing the very simple technology of that time. You had a whipped up sense that it was us versus them. And it wasn't that they were a little bit wrong, a little bit incorrect. It was they are a threat to us. And people who had been to church together, people who were married together, people who were related, people who'd worked together, people who had struggled in a liberation campaign to get independence for Rwanda, turned on each other. There is always the bitterness that, as we know from the Bible and from other stories, brother against brother can be the most wicked and worst conflict. We know that the largest death toll of any American war was the American Civil War. If the American Civil War had occurred with today's population, you would have countless millions who would have died in that conflict. It impacted society for well over 100 years. Some impact was good, but other impact was bad. And Rwanda is a case study of external people not understanding, internal leadership not understanding. There was a failure by the church, a failure by the aid organizations, a failure by the voluntary organizations, a failure by business, by the military, by the media. Everyone allowed the madness of hate to get out of control. And I look at what happened on the 7th of October, for example. That was another exercise in hate and barbarity. So you had people who were not involved in the military action, but who came to loot, to steal, to rape, to kill. They took opportunity. Wherever there is this prism of, we democratized the media by making it easy for everyone to communicate. But what we have also created is the demonization of the media. We have some of the worst aspects of pornography, some of the worst aspects of racism, some of the worst aspects of misogyny and extremism. And it's been fueled by the technology that we use, the communications that we have available. It's like some of the most intelligent, most educated people on this planet have, for their own reasons, chosen to pander to their worst potential inner thoughts. And I find that your audience probably is a little bit younger than me, but maybe not so much younger. We remember when you could trust most of what you saw, most of what you heard, most of what you could see. Now with AI, now with the technology capability, people can do a facial situation. I can look as handsome as you. You can have fake videos. You can have fake evidence. You can have fake CCTV. And you sometimes realize that a 12-year-old has the skills to do this now.
Well, this is interesting because I think this is what I was going to touch on some of the question. Guys, if you have any question, please feel free to put in a chat box as we looking at this fake news, which is a very interesting. And Noel talked about the emergence of technologies that's kind of fueled those fake news. And it's quite interesting because one of my question was, and obviously this is more like a rhetoric, but social media must be playing a major part in kind of acceleration of fake news. And you talked about AI. One of the things that we found out lately is, as you said, AI now able to replicate not only your facial, but also replicate your voice as well, which is really kind of put us in a situation where, so how do you differentiate from fake news, from disinformation to good information or to good news? Because it's a very difficult in the world that we're living. I know, for example, that the young generation spend a lot of time on social media, on Facebook or TikTok and so on, and they do get a lot of their information on those platforms. So is there any way to kind of, and I know the government has been trying to do it, but are we seeing in the future some kind of regulation for the social platform to kind of regulate a little bit more what is said? I mean, the short clip that we show here was talking about a lot. For example, the extremists of the far right, they really operating a lot of those other platforms like Telegram, which is a very kind of encrypted way to actually provide those messages. But then those messages push as well to one of the bigger platforms such as Meta and such as X as well, which is a very quite interesting, which is kind of gathering a big numbers. But how do we deal with fake news? In the world that we're living in now.
Well, this is like the balancing trick at the circus. It's like the person who is walking along the rope with the stick, 100 feet above.
Mm,
One step this way, one step that way, disaster.
mm,
They have to keep on going, but it's also entertainment. When you sometimes ask yourself, why does this pay? Why does this work out for people? You mentioned clickbait.
mm,
If you have more people, sometimes you can get actual real money. But also, there's what's called the liar's dividend. Somebody who tells the truth has the benefit of knowing that they've told the truth. But if you tell a lie enough times, and if you tell a lie to enough people, you will get a feedback. You will get people agreeing with you. You
mm,
will get people saying you are correct, and maybe even taking that lie and making it a bigger lie. So
mm,
we have this tension between who regulates social media. Is it government? Now, if China or Iran regulated my media, I don't know if I'd be very happy, but they do that already. In their societies, they have very, very strong control over what you see, what you hear, and literally what you do.
mm,
We live in a society where there is more freedom, but with that freedom comes the burden of judgment. It is like somebody deciding what is the right thing to do. Should we be cynical? Should we be perceptive and inquisitive enough to ask questions? To go, Jean-Marc, you receive an email from a Nigerian prince who says he has 10,000 American dollars to give you if only you gave him your bank account details.
hmm,
You know, you and I may be old enough and ugly enough, maybe not you, I am definitely, to say, well, maybe this Nigerian prince is maybe a worker in Burma who is working as a slave worker for some evil businessman who is having to write 5,000 of these automated messages a day to make 50 or 150 American dollars for their businessmen. This is the reality of life. We have to maybe ask people to grow up. We ask them on their faith journey to be bigger people, stronger people, more resilient people. We ask our children to grow up to be healthier, happier, more content, to be more considerate of others, to be hard workers, to have self-respect. So maybe we need to stop being lazy with our social media accounts, and we may have to put in more effort ourselves. I do not see the cavalry coming to save us.
mm,
It may be AI, it may be technology, it may be a little bit of regulation, but in the end, if it looks like it's too good to be true, it is.
mm. It's a very
It's
interesting.
the old story. If you saw me
Mm,
in a t-shirt with 3 earrings, you would know, apart from fake news, that there are aliens, on Earth. There is no question. Some things just fall outside of what is,
Mm.
reasonable truth. And we may have to ask people
Mm.
to be stronger.
But it's so, at times it is so, because that disinformation is so, in a way is a little bit settled. So make it very, and I get what you said, and I actually agree with you. The fact that I think people don't, because back in the days, people will actually question the truth, so they will try to seek the truth in that sense. But these days, they're taking everything that's shown them on social media for truth, and as a parent, sometimes I am at times concerned, when I hear our young ones are just looking what's going on TikTok or what's going on whatever platform they're using these days. It's just moving all the time. Um, and I tell you, I saw this on TikTok, and I believe that's true. And where for a fact that there's no proof that it is true. And I think that what we've seen, for example, in the summer riot is first of all, as I mentioned, it is one aspect of it is the horrible tragedy that took place in that sense, which actually after a few days was completely overlooked because the whole focus was going on was the message that was being sent, and preying, I think, first of all, on people lack of understanding, ignorance, preying, as you mentioned, which it was so key. I believe it is so key on people's emotion, because people already tired of the situation. The current climate kind of fuel everything, because if you're in a situation, a climate where there's crisis, there's not enough money, there's not enough food, there's not, where's the first people that you're going to blame? It's pretty much the people that are not in your country, so the migrants seem to be the first one to be blamed. So when you see a situation such as this taking place, it's very easy to actually kind of put a disinformation in information actually which is actually not right at all, and begin to fuel people's anger. It might be something that already was probably inside people anyway in the first place, and what he needed to just lit the fire to really kind of spread this. But I think for
Yeah,
me,
indeed.
mm,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if I could say that much of this is different now because of technology,
mm,
but not different at heart.
mm,
120 years ago, well before he got power in Russia, Vladimir Lenin,
mm,
this a towering political figure,
yes,
a very successful political figure.
mm,
I, of course, have no friendship with his ideology, but
mm,
I have respect for his skill. What did Lenin say in 1902 when he was still a very small character in the Bolshevik Party, trying to lead them to even a little bit of power, let alone controlling a country? He said there were two wings of the bird. There is propaganda, where you use a little bit of history, a little bit of science, a little bit of reason, a little bit of truth in a certain way, and you indoctrinate, you take over the thinking of educated, enlightened, powerful individuals, so that they understand your perspective.
mm,
They see the problem through your eyes, through your framework. That was the propaganda, which of course he took from, of all places, the technical term from the Catholic Church. And then he had the term agitation. And this was maybe the exact opposite. It was slogans, it was parables, it was half truths, it was, writing on the wall, it was a leaflet with just simple words: peace, bread, land. And it was to exploit the grievances
mm,
of uneducated people, unreasonable people, disappointed people,
mm,
angry people. And when you have large numbers of people who are under stress, who are distressed, who have problems in their lives, and their lives are not as good as what they would like, either for themselves or their children, then the ability for someone to give you simple solutions, simple answers to your problem or your society's problem, it's human nature. You know, when you are thirsty, you grab the glass of water. Now, I know this is water, but it could be alcohol, it could be poison. People are drinking the poison because they're desperate. And also, if enough people have this sense of seeing the world with the same set of eyes, then you feel validated. It can't be you. You're not the unusual person. There's 5,000 people who thought that post on Facebook was good. There were 10,000 people on Instagram who thought that was a good image. There were 15,000 people on Twitter who even noticed something. All of a sudden, you don't feel isolated. You feel stronger, safer, even if you are doing that at the cost of somebody else.
This is very, very interesting. Thank you so much. Guys, if you have your question, please feel free to send your question here. I've got a couple of questions as well for you as we hear. You know, we briefly touch on AI, and we know technologies right now is playing a big part into fake news. Do you think with the advancement of AI, we are going to see more sophisticated disinformation in the near future?
We've already seen it. We already have. I think you and I both remember the movie Terminator with the shape-shifting Arnold Schwarzenegger. I mean, he had a good body, he had some good muscles, he had a few good lines, and it made his career. So good luck to him, as they say. Then he went into politics. Look what happened. But the reality is that AI now is like wireless when the Nazis were using wireless in the 1930s. AI is already shaping how we see things, what we believe is truth, what we believe is reasonable, what we also how we organize information, blockchain, whole range of technological innovations. And don't get me wrong, if it finds a cure for cancer faster, if it helps trains in England to work better, if it helps Heathrow Airport not lose your luggage, that's all well and good. But with AI, with decision-making, with choices, with applications being taken away from humans and into machine learning, we have the capacity for mistakes that we could not even understand to occur. I mean, we are from the West, from America, Europe, the what I call the free countries. We still believe that the person who flies the plane or the person who fires the missile is a person. Who says another regime, another country who is different to us will threaten us and say, well, if you don't give in, if you don't give us your land, your minerals, your seabed, if you don't stand up for others because we want them, who knows what they will do. These are difficult, dangerous times. I'm not a technology person. I'm the person who still remembers using a typewriter. You have to go to a museum to see a typewriter now. But the power of technology, to move people for bad and for good. We saw technology move people for good in the pandemic. People helped other people. I and my wife and 700,000 people joined the Royal Voluntary Organisation. We helped people. We helped the NHLs. We helped neighbours. The technology helped us because it said, go here, go there, do this, do that. It would have been much more difficult. But with that good, we also have the bad. And, this is what we have to face. We have become the servants of the technology, not the masters.
Which is very, very interesting. Last topic that I wanted to touch before we finish off here. We've got only about a few minutes left here.
Of course.
As a people of faith, as Christian, for example, and the emergence of those fake news as well. Can fake news have an impact on for Christian, for example, in terms of them kind of sharing the message of Jesus Christ, and now because of this fake news, people can actually turn this message into something completely different. Are we in danger? And I'm only talking for Christian, I'm talking for any other type of faith potentially as well. Are we in danger to see this information kind of not disrupted but distorted the truth in that sense?
Well, I think one of the most important things is to recognize that faith communities are like a brick wall. Each individual is a brick, and their faith, their confidence, their understanding, their relationship with others in their community, in their church, with their relationship with God, is the mortar that brings all these bricks together to make a strong wall.
Okay.
But a wall is only as strong as its weakest brick. And unfortunately, fake news, propaganda, disinformation, misinformation can be used to undermine people of faith. Pardon me. Often it's the marginalized person, the person who's been through a divorce, through illness, who maybe has questions of acceptance. Pardon me. This must be the London pollution getting into me inside my house. I must write to the Secretary of State for the Environment. But my apologies to
That's okay.
your listeners. But the reality is that these communications, these narratives, like I said, democratization of the media has become the demonization of the media. People who want to hurt others, people who want to undermine others' faith, others' confidence, others' contentment, have this tool. And this tool of technology is so powerful because it's so cheap. You and I, Jean-Marc, had to be a millionaire to buy a television station to broadcast 25, 35 years ago. I have a suspicion you and I are not millionaires, and yet
Definitely not.
we are broadcasting to potentially 100, 1,000, 10,000 people. That's power. That with power comes responsibility, and also with power comes the temptation of irresponsibility. And people of faith should watch out for people who are using these messaging opportunities to do hurt, to do harm, to promote hate, but also to just break confidence. What is the single biggest thing that they can win? They undermine our trust in ourselves and in our judgment.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Noel, for being with us this evening again and really talk to us about fake news and the importance of, I'm listening to this and I'm just thinking that there's so many things out there outside, but we've got, we've got to really, a good journalist always we check his source, his good source. And I think, as I would say, we also need to check our sources as well once we're actually taking on those news that are coming from right, left, center. But I want to thank you again, Noel, for being with us this evening, and we shall again see you again. I would think at this stage, probably at some stage this year again. But thank you again,
Well,
Noel.
thank you so much, Jean-Marc, and I apologize for nearly not surviving the delightful pollution
You made it.
of London. But anyway, these things, don't tell any of the foreigners. Tell them to come to London. Tell them to spend money.
Oh,
Okay, you take
you
care.
made it. Thank you, Noel. Thank you very much. That was Noel Hadjimichael here, which is to talk to us about fake news as well. And thank you again, guys, for really listening to this evening. And for those who missed it, you can always just watch it again on our various platforms on YouTube as well. Finally, just before closing up this fire chat, I just want to let you know of our next fire chat, which will be taking place on the 8th of May from 8 p.m. And I'm going to be joined by John Bostock, footballer. We're going to be talking about faith and we're going to be talking about football. So please do not want to miss that. That will be on the 8th of May from 8 p.m. Faith and football with John in essence. Guys, I hope that you enjoy this evening. I think this is it for me, and I will see you later on. Until then, have a wonderful time and see you back in May. Ciao, everyone.